wherever you are in the world. Just to get everyone oriented, today we will have live interpretation in French and Spanish. All you need to do is click on the globe icon at the bottom of the screen to access interpretation. L'interprétation est accessible en cliquant sur l'icône du globe terrestre au bas de votre écran. Steffi, I don't know if you mind doing the Spanish orientation to the interpretation.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, you sound good.
Yes, great.
Yes, we do.
Para acceder a la traducción, pueden hacer clic en el botón del globo que se encuentra abajo de la pantalla. Gracias. Over.
Next slide, please. And over to you, Dennis, to get us started.
Many thanks, Alexa. My name is Dennis Kioko. I work with the Global Cluster Coordination section in UNICEF as a localization specialist, and I'm happy today to co-moderate this session together with Alexa. For those of us who are joining right now, please remember to just type in your name in the chat box and the organizations that you also come from. Thanks. Next slide, please.
Oh, actually, apologies. Can we go back to the last slide? Thank you. So thank you so much, Dennis. I'm really happy to be co-facilitating with you today. My name is Alexa, or Alexandra Humphreys. I am the GNC Interim Localization Help Desk. And I say interim because I look forward to, we're currently recruiting, and I look forward to having someone in this position with lived experience of working with local and national actors, hopefully by the end of the year. And now just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with anyone who is attending. Please introduce yourself in the chat as we're going along. Tell us your name, your role, and where you're listening in from today so we can get to know everyone a bit. And we do encourage you to keep your mics and cameras off unless you're presenting or asking a question later on in our Q&A session. And if there are any questions during the session, we ask that you put those in the chat, and we'll try to answer those questions as we go today. If there's any IT support requests, also please put those in the chat. And just to confirm that the recording and all the slides today, they will be shared with you all following the event. Next slide, please. Wanted to begin the webinar with a note of appreciation and acknowledgement. This webinar is hosted by the Global Nutrition Cluster, but it's also organized and made possible because of a number of partners. GREN in DRC, we have FAYA in Ethiopia, Nusanet in Lebanon, SHED in Bangladesh, and ONG Action Paysanne in DRC as well as UNICEF. These are our active partners making this webinar possible today. And then also need to warmly thank our wish to warmly thank our resource partners, USAID, Irish Aid, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark, UNICEF as well, and the Canadian government. Next slide, please.
Many thanks, Alexa, for the housekeeping and also acknowledging the organizers. Just as the name of this webinar goes by, building quality funding proposals for local and national actors. We hope that by the end of this webinar, we'll have achieved 3 objectives. The first one is to provide an overview of the key elements of a successful funding proposals, which we already have resource persons who will be taking us through, and also hearing from different organizations that have really experienced on this aspect. We'll also, get to know sharing of regional experiences from local and national actors on what has made their proposals successful, and then provide an opportunity for participants to share their experiences and also ask questions. Before we proceed to the next slide, maybe just to ask participants to quickly send us on the chat, type on the chat, what is the one expectation that you hope to achieve, we achieve by the end of this webinar. So type in the chat box, one expectation you hope for us to achieve by the end of this webinar. I'm waiting to start reading those expectations. I can see Ismail Jainti concepts for writing a highly competitive proposal. Alexa, I would like to hear some practical examples of successful strategies for successful proposal. I'm still awaiting us to type in the chat our expectation. Good and competitive proposal techniques preparations. Our panelists are reading this through, so if you can type in, so we'll continue, and then we'll continue also looking at those expectations, and we hope that we'll achieve them by the end of this webinar. Next slide, please.
So in terms of the webinar agenda, it's going to be a pretty full one. We're having the opening now, and we're going to have some opening remarks. We're going to have a fantastic presentation on the key elements for a successful funding proposal. We'll provide a really nice global overview. Then we're going to have some brief sharing of proposal experiences by local and national actors. We have those partners from 5 different organizations who are going to be sharing what are some key success factors, what were some key challenges that they faced, but ultimately, what led to their success. And then we're going to be trying something new today. Instead of having one Q&A session in plenary, we're actually going to have parallel Q&A sessions in 5 different breakout rooms with our panelists. So we're very excited to see how this goes. Then we will all come back into plenary for key takeaways, and then we will have a closing. Next slide, please. Great. Oh, and apologies, Steffi was going to be giving our opening remarks today, but asked me to step in. So I'm just going to say a couple quick words about how excited I am for today's webinar. And this is building off of a lot of different efforts and a lot of conversations and hard work behind the scenes. In April of this year, the GNC launched the GNC Localization Roadmap 2022-2025. This is a guiding document that includes 42 activities aimed at fostering a more enabling environment for localization. And activity 12 in this roadmap includes GNC support for things like resource mobilization for local and national actors, because this has, time and again been identified as a challenge. So the purpose of this webinar, which is not one standalone webinar, it's actually a 3-part series, is here we want to be able to give you some really practical suggestions, guidance, and examples of how to have a successful funding proposal for your organization. I did say this is 1 in a 3-part series. We had the first webinar in June of this year, and that one was looking sort of overall, what is the funding landscape? What is the funding landscape for nutrition and emergencies, and what is it for local and national actors? And we had 2 really great organizations, examples that did presentations as well. So this is our second in the series, and it was also based on your feedback from the first webinar, what you wanted to hear about. So today we're focusing on building quality funding proposals. So just keeping it brief, I want to say thank you again on behalf of the Global Nutrition Cluster. We really appreciate your presence, and we look forward to your active participation during this this webinar. So thank you so much. Next slide, please. Okay, so Dennis already introduced himself. I introduced myself as well. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction for each of our fantastic speakers that we have for you today. First, we have Estefania or Steffi Grivalja. She is the GNC Resource Mobilization Advocacy Consultant. She has 10 years of experience managing global, regional, and country level public, private, and multi-stakeholder partnerships in humanitarian and development contexts across all continents. Then we have Dr. Makias Girma Demelash, who's joining us again. He was actually a part of our first webinar and was so great, we invited him to join us for this one. He serves as the Emergency Relief Program Director at FIA Integrated Development Organization, or FIDO. Oh, careful, I think someone's scribbling on the screen. Try not to do that. It makes our slides look a bit off. He has humanitarian experience identifying funding opportunities, leading grant proposals, and managing strategic partnerships. During his tenure, he successfully mobilized funds for multi-sectoral projects addressing drought and conflict. Then, oh, so sorry, I should have actually given Claude's introduction first. And I need to pull that up. So sorry, Claude. Charbel Tiwal is an experienced humanitarian and interior architect, skilled in sustainable design and research. He is a strong business development professional with certificates focused on product design and circular economy from Delft University of Technology. He is serving as head of programs at Nusaned and NGO since 2023. With extensive experience managing humanitarian projects with this organization since 2020. Additionally, he teaches interior architecture at the Lebanese American University. And then Zair Rahman works for the Society for Health Extension and Development, or SHED. This is a Bangladeshi local or national organization as deputy director and focal for the Health and Nutrition Department. He has worked for the last 10 years with this organization and has nearly 15 years of experience in the humanitarian and development fields in Bangladesh. So he comes to us with vast experience. We also have John Seker Vurumen. He has a degree in community health and is currently doing a master's in water and environment. He is the founder and current country director of the NGO Action Paysanne, which currently operates in 6 different provinces of Congo. And so sorry, I need to pull up Claude. I'm so sorry, I need to pull up your bio real quick. Because I realize I closed out of that. There we are. Last but not least, Claude Shigango. Claude is a Congolese nutritionist and doctoral student in public health, and his studies in that are ongoing. He has more than 25 years of humanitarian experience in health and nutrition, and he is currently the chairman of the GREN board of directors. So in conclusion, we have a fabulous panel and fabulous speakers for you today. We're really excited to get into it. So I will hand back over to you, Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexa. Next slide, please. Maybe just to ask if you can type in the chat box by indicating 1. Do you represent an organization led by women, people with disability, refugees, or other marginalized groups? If yes, please tell us about your organization in the chat box. So you can just write in the chat box the name of the organization, which are you a women-led organization? Are you a refugee-led organization? Are you a organization of persons with disability or representing other marginalized groups? And then you can also indicate which region you are currently operating in. Would like to to recognize that in the in the aspect of inclusivity. As we also, I can see that we have organizations that have already started, individuals that have already started typing. So I'll invite our speaker, Steffi, to
Oh, we might have
We
lost Dennis
yeah.
momentarily. Next slide, please. Yeah, and just handing over to you, Steffi. Looking forward to the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dennis and Alexa. Good morning and afternoon, dear partners. It's a great pleasure to join this webinar and to see many partners joining us from all corners of the world. My presentation is going to be short and it will focus on sharing some key strategies and tips for building high-quality funding proposals that will be complemented by the more interesting insights that will be shared in the next segment by our guest speakers from local and national partners. Next slide. So to start, before applying for funding, there are 4 key strategies that you can implement to help your organization secure funding. First and foremost, it's very important to get your team and your organization understand the importance of funding and fundraising, which are key to your organization's sustainability, as without resources, it's impossible to exist and operate, as we know. So fundraising is much more than just asking for money. It really involves engaging and building long-term relationships with donors and other stakeholders, and also creating a sense of shared purpose where supporters feel connected to your mission and understand the impact of their contributions. So the second step is to identify the right funding opportunities, which will guarantee from 60 to 70% of your success. And I don't know what's happening because I see a lot of lines.
Yeah, we're trying to get those tidied up. But Steffi, just a reminder to try to speak really slowly for the interpreters.
Of course, apologies. I hope I will manage to do it in 10 minutes. But yeah, so the second strategy is to identify the right funding opportunities. So I was mentioning this will guarantee between 60 to 70% of your success. So you really have to identify funding opportunities that align to your mission and objectives. And it's really important also to carefully review the eligibility requirements and guidelines of each grant opportunity to determine if it's a good fit or not for your organization. So to identify opportunities, you can leverage online resources, but networking and partnering with other organizations are also very powerful tools to identify and access funding opportunities. The third strategy, and I think this is one of the most important, is to build direct relationships with funding partners whose priorities align to your mission and goals. It's also important to cultivate these relationships by keeping in touch with them, providing updates on your achievements, and also expressing gratitude for their support. Because keeping them engaged is really important to help you establish a sense of mutual trust and commitment, which is really important in resource mobilization. The final strategy is leveraging technology, which has become really powerful for grant research, but also application processes. So there are a lot of tools online. Some are free, some are paid. Some are mentioned here in the presentation, but it's really important that you try to leverage those. And that includes ChatGPT, which I personally use every day, and it really saves you a lot of time when it comes to editing and proofreading your funding proposals. So that's also very important. So now moving to the next slide, please. Once you have identified the right funding opportunities, the rest, so the 40% of your success, which is the remaining part of being successful in accessing funding, is to develop a high quality funding proposal that fully aligns to your target donor priorities and the funding call guidelines. To achieve this, you can apply the 3Ps formula, which is outlined here. And this is actually inspired in successful business development strategies that are applied in the private sector. So within the first P, position, you need to put the donor in the picture with a brief description of the current situation, the context, and the needs, as we will see in the next slide. The next stage is to get the donor on board with the specific problem to be addressed and why you need their help, making it very clear that a change must be made. Next and final stage is P number 3, proposal, which is the most important part of your funding submission. And this is where you will be setting out clearly what actions should be taken and what the specific outcomes will be. So in the next slide, we're going to see how this 3Ps formula relates to the structure of funding submissions. So they vary widely across donors and funding mechanisms, but in the next slide, we will see an overview of the structure and key elements that are usually covered in funding proposals. Next slide, please. So here, as you can see, throughout the structure and elements, we have covered the 3Ps. So what's really important here are 2 things. The first one, as I was mentioning, is to ensure that you're covering the 3P aspects that we have reviewed in the previous slide. And the second one is to ensure that you develop a solid results framework, which is element number 4 here in the wheel, the green element. So this is very important because this is actually the basis that will be used by donors for decision-making in terms of granting you or not the funding you're applying for. It's also important to, the best approach actually when you start developing a funding proposal is to start with this piece. So you start with building the results framework and also the budget. So there is a framework that is called the Integrated Results and Resources Framework, which combines the results framework and the budget. So that's really important for you to start developing because that's the basis. Everything else that you see, the other 9 elements are tied to this, and everything else is actually narrative. So it's important that you start with this, you get it right, and also properly structured, so the rest will be much easier. Here it's also important to remember that the results framework, which is actually the matrix that outlines your project's outcomes, outputs, activities, targets, indicators, and budget, is actually has to be aligned to the HRP results and indicators in humanitarian projects. In development projects, we usually tie those to national development plans and sectoral plans at the country level, but we can discuss this maybe in more detail in the Q&A sessions. But it's really important that, yeah, you first have this results framework structure, and then you can develop the rest of the elements of the funding proposal. So now, in the next slide, and to close, because I think I don't have a lot of time left, we just want to share some additional recommendations and strategies. So you will get access to this presentation. I won't go over each of them. I just want to focus on 4. So the first one, and this is one of the most important, of course, is to follow the donor guidelines and ensure that you comply with eligibility requirements. So if it's a call that is only open for government partners and you are an NGO, then there is no point in applying, right? So the second one is the importance of focusing on results. And that's outlined in the next slide. So focus on results as opposed to activities. And here, always highlight who will be supported through your project. It's really important that you mention how many people will be reached and who they are. That's really important. If you don't include this, then you have 0 chances of securing the funding for your project. The third very important recommendation, which is in the next slide, is to not overpromise. So be realistic with what you can achieve and budget realistically as well. It's important here to remember that if you overachieve a target, it's always great news for the donors and they're going to be happy. But if you underachieve, it's bad news and they're going to be unhappy. And it's actually very difficult to negotiate renewals or amendments to funding agreements in those cases. So just bear in mind that it's always better to budget less, target less than and over commit to something that you might not be able to achieve. The final one, and this is really important, is to be honest and clear about the challenges that you face in your particular operational contexts. Well, there is a lot of competition and we are under a lot of pressure to deliver and show results and be best value for money. We're not for-profit companies. We are humanitarian organizations which operate in very imperfect and complex operational environments. So we should always outline and reflect properly these in our fundraising and advocacy efforts with donors. So with this, I'd like to end my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions on the chat, and I really look forward to a more detailed discussion in the Q&A segment. So I now turn back to you, Alexa and Dennis, for the next segments of the webinar. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Steffi. Dennis, have you been able to join us yet? If not, that's okay. I'll do the next piece. Thank you so much, Steffi. Really interesting presentation. I know from myself, my takeaway is I will not forget the 3Ps approach, the position, problem, proposal. That was a good one. Next slide, please. And apologies, Steffi, I know you weren't able to get through the full presentation. I know you still had some tips, but these slides will be shared after the event, and all of this is, documented for you. Next slide, please. And then just one more slide. Great. Okay. So colleagues, this brings us to the panel discussion. We're really excited to hear from our different panelists. And we are actually going to start, and again, the panelists are going to tell us, what were some success factors that made their proposal successful. And ideally, they will also share with us some challenges that they had to overcome. So I would first like to invite Claude from the organization GREN. Next slide, please. Really excited, Claude, to hear about your experiences with this proposal and project.
Yes, thank you for giving me the floor. I'm going to be speaking in French. In fact, GREN is based in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's a NGO, Congolese NGO, and the project that I'm talking to you about is really a project. It's the implementation, integrated implementation of a response in health, in the health region of Mirabango, in Kivu. It's in the context of armed conflict and zones that are occupied by the rebels, and also governmental zones. The project started in February and it ended in September 2024, 13th of September. So the donors, the project had about $600,000 US, and that's the common humanitarian funds. Regarding the success, there were 3 success factors. Usually, it's the expertise. So because we are an organization that's specialized in nutrition and health, so we really have this mandate, and we have the quality is really put forward, quality, and also the regional, the geographical position in priority zones, because we are positioned according to the cluster. We are really where in priority zones, priority areas where people really need assistance in nutrition. And the third is the internal processes that need to be applied correctly. So follow the documentations, the procedures, and to implement them correctly on the field. That's the 3 factors of success. And of course, we have a reduced capacity for advocacy, and that's really where access to financing as well was really. So that's really the challenges that we had. So that's why it's very good to have these webinars, so that we know how to get better and improve, etc. And also reduce eligibility because we don't have enough backers, financial backers. If we don't go through an international NGO, it's very difficult. So thanks God, we've got the common humanitarian funds in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It is giving the opportunity to all the NGOs. Thank you very much. And I do thank you very much. I'm giving you the floor back.
Thank you, Claude. That was perfect. And it was really interesting. I appreciated hearing how one of your success factors was really around your technical expertise of your staff, how you're very strong in this area, and then also your proximity to the affected populations. I would like to invite next Dr. Mikias. Thank you for changing the slide. Dr. Mikias to speak to us about his success with this important proposal in Ethiopia and funding from USAID BHA. So over to you, Dr. Mikias. Thanks. Really nice to have you.
Thank you, Alexa, and good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. So I will share. This project is entitled with the integrated approach that consists of 3 sectors: health, nutrition, wash response, and it's proposed for the conflict and drought crisis in Tigray and in Benishangul Gumuz region, which is found in Ethiopia. So it's a year project and funded by USAID BHA, and it's $1 million project, and of those to around 3,000 is for the nutrition. So one of the success factors in designing this project is operational presence, which is largely matter, and also experience in the sector. So these factors is important so that we can able to show for the donors what is really being on the ground and what is the priority needs in terms of for addressing the community needs, specifically for the sector. The other is we have to draft a clear logical framework or result framework, which is the necessary part. And as a national NGO, we have to given the opportunity to show how it can be done on that given context. So having a local presence in showing that is very important to show clearly the result framework. The other is knowing the priority areas and strategic priorities of the donor, as well as for the sector in terms of the nutrition cluster. So there is a yearly plan. So yearly plan that's shared by the cluster. So we have to manage to align with those priority in order to bring this collective action as a whole, as a partner, in order to contribute for the nutrition cluster objectives. The other one I would like to share is the challenge we face. So as a national NGO, there is a lack of data or rapid need assessment is widely not available, especially given these emerging needs in different pocket areas. So that continuous need assessment is not available. So that force low in terms of giving showing the really needs or context for that specific area in terms of magnitude, like the population in need, the target population, and how it affects those populations. So the other is the timeline given to develop these proposals. Usually it's short. So in order to maintain quality proposals in shortest time frame is always challenging, given the expertise and the capabilities of national NGOs that may have in terms of diverse expertise. The other is donor guidelines. We have to stick with donor guidelines. Like for the BHA, there is the emergency application guideline, and there is a nutrition sector requirement. So at each stage of the proposal, on the need assessments, on the technical design part, we have to stick with those plans. So we have to maintain the required subsectors interventions, and we have to stick how we are going to do that, and we have to show it on that segment. So these are the overall aspects as experience sharing from our end. And thank you, Alexa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Mikias. Really great to hear all these pieces. I thought it was so well put how you mentioned really not only knowing your organization and your operations and the population, affected population, incredibly important, but also knowing and aligning with the strategy of the donors, because at the end of the day, that's a really important piece as well. So thank you for sharing that. Next slide, please. Now I would like to welcome Charbel to speak to us about the Hadkun project in Lebanon. Over to you, Charbel.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. This is Sherbil Tawil, Head of Programs at Busanid NGO. We are glad to talk today about our part of HATCON project, which was funded by La Guilde, which is a French donor. The total budget was 326,000 euros. And the project was for a period of 10 months. It is a multi-sectoral food security and nutrition project from July 23 till April 24. It operated in 2 locations in Lebanon, in Baalbek and Saida, benefiting a total of 600 households. The program involved several key activities, including the distribution of food aid in various forms, such as food vouchers and cash assistance, along with nutrition-related social behavior changes, SBC interventions. The project also supported 8 MSMEs or vendors as we asked them to contribute in our food voucher system, and included nutrition awareness sessions targeting caregivers of children under 5, adolescent girls, PLW, and elderly included as the project beneficiaries. Focusing on the success stories of the project, the awareness sessions were an essential component featuring the development and dissemination of education material like flyers and videos. These materials were culturally relevant and easily understood by the beneficiaries, contributed to the program's effectiveness. The use of simple language, visual, and local examples helped reinforce key nutrition messages. We also organized nutrition workshops and open consultation days, which took place when the beneficiaries had to collect the monthly vouchers for the project. These sessions targeted 5 groups: the infants from 0 to 6 months, the infants from 7 to 24 months, children from 8 to 13, pregnant and breastfeeding women, in addition to elderly 60 years plus. This allowed us and our donor, La Guilde, who were with us on the field, to design and to deliver nutrition awareness sessions that directly addressed the customized and unique needs of each group. In addition to these activities, pre and post intervention survey were conducted to beneficiaries. These surveys helped in assessing the knowledge, attitude, and practices, ensured we could measure the program's impact and make data-driven adjustments when necessary during the project. The combination of nutrition and education and distribution of specific food vouchers ensured that beneficiaries not only learned about healthy eating, but also had access to the resources necessary to implementing these practices, since we had our food security component in this project. Some challenges that would also be good to mention in our discussion today is the logistics. We had some conflict in some camps and areas in Lebanon, so we had to change some of the methods from one area, the methods from vouchers to cash, whereas we kept the nutrition component as possible. The language and literacy barriers. Many beneficiaries had low literacy level, which made it challenging to communicate some of or more technical aspects of nutrition. We had to simplify the content and use visual aid more extensively and initially planned. The sustainability of such project is really something to mention, especially that the fund is limited to a specific period, as mentioned, and such projects are difficult to continue without or with limited resources. Thank you.
Many thanks, Shalbir, for sharing the project, taking note on some of the key things that you've mentioned: integration, use of simple language, and also being mindful on sustainability component. For colleagues, please, you can still continue putting down your questions, reflections on the chat box, even as we move to the next presenter, who will be presenting on behalf of Society for Health Extension and Development. That will be Rahman. Welcome, Rahman, on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. This is Jaur Rahman. I'm working for Society for Health Extension and Development. My organization is actually situated in Bangladesh. This is the very southern part of the Bangladesh, under the Cox's Bazar district. And we are implementing one nutrition project named the Integrated Nutrition Interventions for malnutrition treatment and support in the Rohingya refugee camps. You know that there was one massive Rohingya influx in Bangladesh. 2017, almost 1 million people crossed the border to the Bangladesh. Now there was one big humanitarian crisis, and we are implementing some projects, life-saving projects at the camps. These projects is actually started earlier in 2016 by the support of UNICEF. That time it was very smaller scale. Just we had received some fund from the SARF, the Central Response Fund, and earlier it was less than 1 lakh USD. Now it has grown to almost 1.6 million USD in the nutrition field. And the timeline of this project is from January to December this year, but it was continued every year. It was 1 year project, and now it is jointly funded by the UNICEF and World Food Program. And major activity under this project is we have both two types of activities: nutrition sensitive and nutrition specific. For nutrition specific, we are providing nutritional treatment for the under 5 children, 0 to 59 months, and adolescent girls, as well as the pregnant and lactating women who are living in the camp setup. There are 45 integrated nutrition facilities jointly supported by the UNICEF and WP. Among those 45 facilities, now currently we are managing 11 nutrition facilities, which is also the large portion by the national actors like us. And when we have started our journey with the UNICEF in 2016, that time some boosting factors or some success factor was there. So far, our understanding in Bangladesh, from the Bangladesh context, there was our physical presence. Physical presence was one of the good boosting factor. At that time, our presence was in Cox's Bazar and the nearby area. It was very good. And another boosting factor, what we thought that is actually the good collaboration with the government agency as well as the local agencies, like the local government, we call them Upazila Parishad or the Union Parishad. There is the local elected body of the community. As a national organization, we always maintain very good collaboration with those agencies. And that was another boosting factors. And third one is actually our gradual development. When we started our journey in 1989 as an organization, we had very limited policies and procedures to govern the organization. But in course of time, when we face various types of compliance audit from the various donor agencies, funding agencies, they always recommend us some improving areas. Based on their improving areas recommendation, we always adopt some policies and procedures. For example, very recent, we had to develop PACA guidelines or the policies. Earlier, we had not it, but the last 3 years, we are doing very good under these policies. And from my side, actually, there is another boosting factor or the success factor. In course of time, every organization, we should adopt some policies and procedure meeting the requirement of the funding agencies. And for the challenge, actually, for national organization and the local organization, there are some challenges as well. My previous speaker also mentioned that we always had to maintain our organization with very limited resources. And for us, actually, we do not have any microfinance organization or the microfinance activities. So we do not have any income generating activities except the ICR or the management cost shared by the funding agencies. That is actually another challenge for us we do not have the fixed income generating activities, and we are fully the humanitarian organization. As a local organization, actually keeping the humanitarian setup is very difficult for the organizations. The second one is actually for organization, when we apply for the any funding agency or the direct donor funding, that case we had to maintain some compliance issue, like the when we applied for the USAID have some prescribed compliance issues, and whenever we applied for the another funding agency like European Union or the other funding agency, they have the another compliance issues. For a national organization, it makes sometimes difficult to maintain all the compliance issues. What is actually very easier for any international agency or UN agencies. And third one is actually sometimes we got that some funding agencies, they are actually not interested to share any indirect cost recovery or the management cost to the national organization. So that when we do not get any management cost or the capacity strengthening cost from the funding agency, it makes some difficulties to keep to retain some senior colleagues who actually have some encyclopedial memories or the organizational living memories. We cannot keep all those senior peoples after losing the project, so that it makes another difficulties. From my side, I think that is from this time. Over to you, Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rahman. Very interesting aspect that you've mentioned on this project that started in 2016. And we've seen that, a very interesting aspect on this project is the aspect of donor acquisition and also donor retention. You've also mentioned something very interesting on, some of your stronger aspects on physical presence, collaborations with governments, communities, and other local organizations, and then stronger organization capacity that you actually developed and grown. Colleagues will allow me to invite John, who will continue with the presentation, and we'll be looking at the project that they have been working on and in the Democratic Republic of Kenya. Democratic Republic of Congo. Thank you. Over to you, John. John, you are muted if you're speaking. We'll give John 1 minute to rejoin the call.
He dropped off the call.
Okay.
I know he's having internet challenges today.
Okay.
Dennis, perhaps I can suggest that we can proceed
Maybe
to the next
slide, please.
Yeah, and hopefully John can come back and join us for the panel discussion, the Q&A sessions, because then he would still be able to provide us some important insights. Thank you so much, Dennis. So colleagues, we're now starting the next part of this event. Really excited for this. We are going to have, instead of providing you with one question and answer session in plenary, we're actually going to have 5 different parallel question and answer sessions, 5 different breakout rooms. Each room will have one of our panelists and one person from the GNC team there to support and take some notes. We are not, it's important to note, we will not have interpretation in each of the rooms. However, we are going to have, we have listed here on the screen for each room what languages the Q&A is available in or what other sort of language support there is in that room. So for example, room number 1 has Claude is going to be there answering questions in French. He is also supported by our team member Geraldine, who is providing some language support in French, English, and Spanish. So for example, if you don't speak French, but you speak English or Spanish, you're welcome to join the room. Maybe ask the question, and Geraldine potentially can provide a bit of light interpretation support or translation support. Room number 2, we have Dr. Mikias is going to be speaking. He's available to answer questions and answers in English or Amharic. And he's supported by Faith, who can support in English or Kiswahili. Room number 3, we have Charbel, who's going to be able to answer questions in English or Arabic. And he's supported by Danka, who can support in English or French. Room number 4, we have Zaire, who's going to be answering questions, and he can answer questions in either English or Bangla, and he's supported by Elena, who can support with English or Spanish. And then room number 5, we have John. And John, are you back with us actually? John, are you able to speak? John, I see that your hand is up. Are you able to unmute yourself and speak? Okay. Not sure if John's connection is working, but if John is able to join, he will be with us in room 5. Hopefully he can and be able to answer questions in French with support from Amadou in French and English. So my colleagues are going to be setting up the breakout rooms. And then once those are available, you can visit those breakout rooms. You can visit any of the rooms that you would like. We have, it looks like, actually, we have a little more than 20 minutes, so feel free to visit these rooms. And then one last note that Steffi, our mobilization resource consultant, is going to be visiting each of the rooms for a couple minutes as well. Great. So it's, I'm seeing, let's see, seeing for the breakout rooms. Yep, you should be able to join the rooms as you wish. Please enjoy the question and answer sessions. Thank you.
Bring all of us back. I see that we are now in the main plenary, we are 19. Okay, as we proceed to the next slide, which will be now discussing the key takeaways in the plenary. I would like us to do a simple exercise. So prepare your for you to type in the chat box. What is the one lesson that you've learned from the different breakout sessions and also from the respective panelists and speaker? Just type in one lesson that you've learned from the breakout session and also from the panelists and the speaker's presentation. Just one lesson. I'm informed that translation for English, French, and Spanish is available. So again, so you can press on the translation button. We are typing what is the one lesson that you've learned from the different presentations that have been shared today. I can see here we have Rashid has typed transparency and communication. Alemu has typed engaging in coordination clusters are vital. Best approaches to build, cultivate relationship with potential donor. Wali, not practical group. I didn't get that, but that's noted. Okay, so as others are also continuing to type in, I'll invite Cloud. You have 3 minutes just for you to share your key takeaways in the plenary and also answer any key questions that might have been asked, and you could respond to all the participants. Welcome, Cloud. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The key takeaways that I'm thinking about now that are emerging from our exchanges, first of all, it would be what mechanism did we use so as to, what did we put into place so as to obtain financing? It was very interesting to share our experiences because first of all, we created it in 2012, but it took a long time to implement because it was a research group, you say, and we needed evidence, and we needed, so it's only 2019, but we started to intervene on the field with UNICEF. And what strategy did we use to obtain financing? We built our strategy with UNICEF because UNICEF, their mandate is really nutrition. So we thought they were the easier financial baker to tackle and to go with. We presented our strategy and UNICEF chose our strategy, and they chose the key takeaways in our strategy because it's not easy for us. And it's not always easy to obtain a competitive financing because, there's lots of solicitations, lots of public tenders, but the UNICEF understood that we could answer their needs. And, and then we had other funds, and then we approached humanitarian funds because we had experience with the United Nations and we could build on that experience. And the very, very important point that we spoke about is in the coordination mechanism, participation is very, very important. You need to participate in the cluster. You need to take part in the technical working groups, to take part in the clusters so as to showcast and also not only to participate and to take part, but to also be on the field. As a local NGO or national NGO, you must have communities, the most affected communities, even if you don't have any financing, you must work with community, people from the community, volunteers who will agree, to work with the NGOs, and who will agree, to relay the information, because of course the financial bakers, they want to make sure that we're in the field, that we're there with the community, that we have links with them, and that we're present. And of course, emergency situation, prevention. We talk about prevention and nutrition for infants and babies, and also taking charge of moderate acute malnutrition and severe acute malnutrition. And it's really important because we have partnership as well with international NGOs, and we are at the moment working with Action Against Hunger for this project because we have access to a lot of financial bakers and important financial bakers, and they're working with us so as to localize the response. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cloud, for those key parting shots. I'll invite Dr. Mikia for key takeaways and any quick reflection. Please, you have only 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. So from our roundtable discussion, majorly we discussed about how to build relationships.
Sorry, we can't hear you, Mikia.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Thank you. So the main the discussion point raised was how to build a relationship with the donors. So that is a key success strategy to engage with major donors. So participating in events, workshops, or coordination platforms allows national NGO to interact with larger humanitarian partners as well as donors. And the other thing is how to maintain like relation with the government sectoral offices, how to collaborate and synergize our efforts for collective outcomes. So the main platform for this is coordination, mainly the cluster approach that would allow national NGOs, international NGOs, UN agencies, donors to interact along with the government counterparts so that duplication, availability of resources, also as well as funding opportunities, as well as like strategic priorities being discussed on that platform. So we will that enable national NGOs to align their priorities with that of the humanitarian partners. The other part is discussion was in terms of physical presence in difficulty to maintain as a national NGO large geographic coverage, so that the essence of as a strategy networking and collaborating with other partners in terms of consortium approach allow national NGO to gain access this geographic scale up, as well as taking expertise in other sectors that would help national NGOs for future scale up in terms of thematic sector. So this is the three key takeaways from the plenary. So I hope I have addressed. So over to you, Dennis. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Menkios. Actually, Dennis is having some connection issues, so I'm going to step in. But thank you so much. That was great. No pressure, but we have about 1 minute left for each panelist to give us some great takeaways. So over to you, Charbel. No pressure, but about a minute for your takeaways, please.
I had an issue with the connection. May I complete again? Sorry for this.
Oh, that's okay. Maybe we'll skip you for now, but oh, okay. But if it comes back, let me know. Zair, could I call on you to come in and give us a couple key takeaways from your session?
Thank you very much. Actually, we have very good discussion with our groups. And one interesting point was that actually everyone is very much interested to know how to retain the existing funding agency rather than charging newer one. That was the main crucial and the curious question from our team members. What was actually discussed in our group that the securing funding agencies trust and the flexibility to their improving areas that was identified by the existing funding agencies. Whenever they said that you are doing very well, but for further betterment you should be address those improving areas, that time we must be flexible to them to address them. That was the main solution what is equally shared in our group. And another point was is actually transparency of partnership and the mutual trust between the partners. That is actually another vital points that was discussed in our group. I think from our side that was the last words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zair. Thank you, and thank you everyone for the important key takeaways. If you have any other takeaways you feel are important, please put them in the chat. Next slide, please. Now, dear colleagues, we are going to launch a poll. Earlier during the opening remarks, I mentioned that we want to hear from you, and that from our first webinar that informed our decision making about the topic for this webinar. And we would like to do the same for the last webinar in the series that we're aiming to hold in December. So please select, if you want to select just one topic, that's fine. If you want to select 2 or 3 that you think are very interesting, please go ahead and complete this poll and weigh in on what you would like to learn about next. And we can't necessarily address everything. We'll have to choose one topic for the last webinar, but even if it's not covered in the next webinar, your weighing in on this and sort of voting on what's important for your organization could lead to other opportunities in the future. So please do complete the poll. And I recognize that we're running out of time. Can we continue the slides and the poll keeps going for a moment? If that is possible, would love to go to the next slide while the poll is still going.
That's not possible.
Okay, no worries. We'll give it a minute. Thanks. Yeah, so it looks like so far, oh, no, great, there's the next slide. We'll let the poll keep going. I know it looks like we have about 29 of you that have weighed in on the poll. Please, others, complete the poll. It's really helpful for us. While the poll is going, I just wanted to reinforce that if you would like to request GNC support, we are always available to provide technical nutrition and emergency support. You can just go to our website, click the request button, and then we will get back to you and see about how we can best support you, considering things like language and what sort of expertise you're looking for. And maybe we can go to the next slide. We can keep the poll open for now. And maybe Dennis, over to you, just to any last key takeaways from you before we close? Oh, if Dennis is still with us, sorry. Okay, on that note, let me just wrap things up. This is why it's good to have two co-facilitators. Just want to say a big thank you to everyone who attended today. It was great to have our fantastic speakers and panelists. The sharing of experiences felt very valuable. I hope it was a valuable time for you. I hope that this was a very useful event. Please, next slide, please. Please, when you leave, there will be a brief webinar evaluation to complete. It takes less than 5 minutes and it really helps us improve our events in the future. So please complete that. Once again, just a warm thank you to everyone that made this event possible and wishing you a great rest of your day.